What's good, YouTube? Welcome to my new car vlog series. In this series, I'm just going to read questions I get on Instagram predominantly and answer them like I would do if I was in the live. Nothing scripted, nothing's planned, not a lot of editing, just me answering some questions. In general, most of these questions will remain anonymous, but this person is a social media influencer, and I like to show love because nobody showed love to me when I started YouTube or Instagram or anything. So with that said, my first question I'll answer is from the spiritual whistleblower. Again, the spiritual whistleblower. She's an author, she does YouTube, I believe, and she's on Instagram pretty heavy. So if y'all want to check her out, again, that's the spiritual whistleblower. Her question is, when will relationship experts start teaching men how to heal their childhood trauma? What are some possible strategies to get men to start processing their emotions in a healthy way that would enable them to grow into a better person? That's a great question. One of the most common comments that are negative that I get on my channel is that I'm so tired of a man telling women what to do. I'm so tired of a man telling women how to be better. When are they going to start talking to these men? When are they going to start talking to these men? Now, I appreciate her question because it was a lot more diplomatic and less accusatory than I normally get when I get a version of that question. And it's a very valid question. I suppose the answer to that for many is never. A lot of guys aren't going to talk to men because there's not a lot of business in talking to men. A lot of these guys are in the business of helping women because it's a business. But their first passion, their purpose, their spiritual motivation isn't necessarily to help women. It's to impress people with their intellect and make a little bit of money. Right? And women are a bigger market. They're a much more profitable market than men, unless you're teaching men how to sleep with women. That market is full, and that market is very lucrative. If you're teaching men how to screw a lot of women, men will line up for that shit, but they are not lining up to become better men or to learn how to be better men. And like I said, a lot of these guys that are on YouTube, they appear to be alpha men. They appear to be very charismatic on screen, but in person, real men really don't respect them. A lot of women confuse masculinity and bravado. Okay, so a lot of women will look at a guy and they'll see a guy who can manipulate women, who can lay with a bunch of women, who can, put the charisma on a lot of women, and he has his way with a woman, and she assumes he's an alpha male because of how he deals with women. But if he walks into a room with a bunch of men, he becomes a beta. He's not an alpha. He's not a leader at all. He has no leadership quality. He's not admired by men. He's not respected by men. So there's a big misconception here that either all of these guys that are talking to women are either experts of masculinity, or that they're even respectable by the standards of most men. And that's just not always the case. So a lot of them aren't doing it because it's not profitable. Some of them aren't doing it because it's not in their nature to lead men. And they may be too effeminate to actually lead men, so nobody's going to listen to them anyway. And then there's another really big reason why people aren't really talking to men. Quite honestly, it's because men can be very, very prideful at times. Men aren't always the most receptive to advice unless they first admire a man in person. Like, I must first kind of want to be like somebody to respect them enough to listen to them, right? You kind of have to earn a man's respect in a different way than women might require. So for a lot of these guys, even though they need the advice, there's not a big market of men flocking to YouTube videos to become better men and support those channels and get that type of coaching, because first of all, men are very prideful. They must first admire a man in person and kind of want what he has before they'll listen to him, and it's very difficult to show a man enough on camera for him to admire you unless you're talking about how many women you screwed, to be quite honest. It's unfortunate because a lot of women, they're so caught up in trying to be more like men, right? So they take the worst quality and they mimic that. When the interesting thing is that women are in many ways stronger than men because they are willing to evolve and willing to be guided out of troublesome territory, because they don't have that same sense of pride and sometimes stubbornness that men mistake for masculinity. So that's just it's not a real big market, because most shitty men aren't lining up trying to figure out how to become better or how to get less ass than they're already getting, to be quite honest. With that said, I do believe it's very important to help men in their evolutionary processes on an individual level, and I think it's an extremely important job to guide men away from being shitbags. To be quite honest, it's been a passion of mine for quite some time, but I've always done it in person. On my videos, because I'm saying nice things to women, and I appear to be a person of character. I am, but appearances can be misleading, but I am who I say I am. But anyway, on these videos, sometimes people think that somehow or another I'm a beta man because I'm nice to women, or I respect and have a reverence and an honor for women. But in real life, I'm an alpha. Everywhere I go, I'm leading. Everywhere I go, I'm respected. Everywhere I go, I influence people around me, men and women, older or younger. It really doesn't matter. And a lot of guys don't have that gift. A lot of guys don't have a natural leadership quality, and it takes a very strong natural leader to lead men away from their bullshit. So everybody's not gifted enough to talk to men, first of all. The way I attempt to help men not necessarily get past their childhood trauma, because I think that that's the job of a psychotherapist or a psychiatrist or a medical professional. There are ways to help men at least identify their problem areas, identify the deviance that they might have in them, right, and try to guide them away from that. But first, you have to provide an image that they respect, right? So they have to get enough. They have to get enough of a perspective from you that they decide that they admire your way of thinking, much like women do when they watch YouTube. But men need a lot more proof first, which can be a good or a bad thing depending on how stubborn they are to receive that proof and believe it. I think the mission of helping men become better people is very important, and so a while ago, me and a friend of mine started a Fatherhood Village podcast, and it's a podcast predominantly about men accepting and identifying their roles, not only in their homes with their wives and their children, but in society. A shared sense of purpose and tribalism can bring men together in a way that strengthens the whole. And so, we call it the Fatherhood Village, and the Fatherhood Village is all about identifying a man's responsibilities and challenges and anxieties and fears and ambitions and goals, and coming together to support one another on that. And on that podcast, which will debut soon, we have about 10 episodes, but on that podcast, we have discussions about a man's place in his home and how he guides his children and how he leads his wife and how he makes decisions to direct his family, and not only his family, but his community. I think that the shared sense of purpose and reminding men of what their purpose is the key to bringing them into a place where they're more receptive of advice and of guidance to be less shitty as people, right? Less using women less, just being a lot less shysty, being a lot less individual and more tribal, being a lot less selfish and more community driven. And more family oriented. I think that is really important. One of the problems in the community with men is that there are a lot of things that go unsaid. There are a lot of things that go undiscussed. Men hide behind their pride a lot of times. They don't necessarily make the improvements or the changes or the evolutions necessary to be their best. So it's not like being shitty isn't working out for them. Being shitty, being selfish, right? Being purely finance and sex driven is pretty much working out for men. So that's another issue. Why do you need my help if you're getting all the ass and all the money you want being a selfish prick? You don't. But the ones who need the help the most, that's how they feel. They're not looking for help. I think that when there appears to be a market for it, when it appears to be more profitable, you'll see all the relationship experts jumping over to try to help men, but that wave may never come, right? So that's one of those things. I know I have some plans for men outreach with the Fatherhood Village. We plan on building a community around men who first understand their purpose, right, and who are passionate about serving their purpose to their communities and to their families. And once a man feels passion about something, passion and obsession are what push a man to change, push a man to evolve, and push a man to strengthen himself in a way that he hadn't previously. Also, a lot of men don't feel valued, and they struggle with that emotional baggage. And to her point, teaching men how to heal their childhood trauma is extremely important because, for the most part, these men go on to create new men, right? And if they're not receiving the help they need from a psychological standpoint, they generally perpetuate the same negative behaviors that they've always let manifest in their own lives. Not enough men on YouTube are leaders in real life, to be quite honest. And it takes a real gifted leader to lead men because they're a lot more stubborn than women. I can't wait to build our podcast and our community up in the Fatherhood Village where we can go give speeches to men, and we can go to where these men are and go to local community centers and talk to the young men, the teenagers especially, and start trying to build a generation of young men that have more core values than what we're seeing now. Men are doing what has traditionally worked. If it stops traditionally working, then they will do something different. So there's a fine balance between being a better man and learning to be a shitty man because that is more efficient. I do believe that helping women become better, helping women raise their standards does help men, because ultimately if what they're doing isn't working, then they'll do something else, even if it means being a better person, even if it means being more patient, more supportive, more emotionally connected to their partner, being less selfish and more selfless. I've personally started taking responsibility for that task as well as strengthening women. But again, the guys who need that advice the most are getting the most ass, and so it doesn't really help to just say it on YouTube. It'd just be a bunch of guys who already believe in the qualities of being honorable and being classy and having integrity and morals and values and ethics. So I'd just be preaching to the choir, right? It's not the healthy that need a doctor, and it's not the choir that needs salvation, right? It's these people on the outskirts of morality. So, hopefully with our podcast, we capture the minds of a lot of men by speaking to the issues that they relate to the most. And as they gain respect for me and my colleague, Dale Holloway, that respect might cause them to hear our voices and listen to the messaging in our podcast, and hopefully take responsibility in their own lives to make improvements to be the best man they can be. So like I said, it takes a shared sense of purpose. It takes men to generally admire another man pretty strongly before he might even consider trying to do what it takes to become more like another man. And so masculine culture is a little bit different, and women are more receptive. And all of these guys aren't really what they say they are, and they're not really respectable. And it's more of a grassroots movement with men sometimes than just turning on a video and speaking to the ones who need to hear it. I hope that helps. Anyway, great question, spiritual whistleblower. I think I've rambled enough about this topic. Follow me at KevFick24 on Instagram. And if you want to check out the spiritual whistleblower, she is actually a narcissism expert. She has a lot to say in guidance to women who might be experiencing real narcissism. So that said, I hope y'all go check her out. Thanks for the question. I'll get with y'all later.